you have come here today, perhaps not by accident, but by the synchronistic call of the soul, a mysterious pull that defies logic and yet affirms a deeper pattern. As I stand before you, I feel not as a lecturer or doctor of the mind, but as a guide, an interpreter of dreams, a spelunker of the unconscious, here to tell you the truth that your spirit already suspects your light does not belong to everyone. Yes, you, the empath, you who have for so long given freely from your wellspring of sensitivity, attuning to others, not merely with your ears, but with the vibrating field of your very being. You feel without being told, you understand without being explained to, you carry the sorrows of others as if they were your own, and therein lies the crucifixion of the empathic soul. But what if I told you that this radiant capacity of yours, this light that pours out like warm oil over the wounds of the world, was never meant to be absorbed indiscriminately by all, that perhaps it was sacred, and its misuse is not charity, but desecration. The unconscious, when left unexamined, becomes the master of your life, and you will call it fate. And so many empaths stumble through life carrying not only their own unconscious, but the unconscious of everyone they encounter. They feel what others repress, they embody what others deny. But this, my dear listener, is not compassion, it is possession. An unconscious collusion with archetypal forces that use your light to illuminate the shadows of others while leaving your own shadow unattended. Starved and unintegrated, let us go deeper, for we cannot remain at the surface of sentiment. We must descend into the symbolic. Consider the ancient dream motif of the bleeding healer, the one who tends to the wounds of others while his own body is pierced and unattended. This figure lives in many empaths. The archetype of Chiron, the wounded centaur who knew pain so intimately that he became the teacher of healing. Yet even Chiron sought isolation. Even he retreated to the mountains. The empath who does not retreat will become the empath who dissolves. You were not designed to be a public altar where all may come to lay their unconfessed sins. Your light is not a municipal resource. It is a sacred flame, and like any sacred flame, it must be protected from winds that would extinguish it. The desire to help all, to save all, to never say no. This is not love. This is the inner child screaming, if I give enough, maybe I will finally be loved. We must confront the source of this inner script. Where did it begin? The empath, in many cases, is born in a household where emotional turbulence reigned. Their sensitivity is not accidental, it is adaptive. The child who had to read the room before every meal, the child who had to pacify the violent, soothe the distant, become invisible to avoid chaos. That child became you, and you were thinking this hyper-attunement is love. Carry it into your adult relationships like a talisman of survival. But now it is no longer adaptive, it is imprisoning. You cannot find wholeness by becoming everything to everyone. You cannot alchemize your suffering into transformation if your very soul is diffused into others' pain. Individuation, the sacred task of becoming who you truly are, requires withdrawal from the collective unconscious, not immersion in it. It requires boundaries, not walls, but energetic membranes that say, here I end, and you begin, and yet how many empaths violate this boundary daily, convinced that self-erasure is a virtue. Let me share a dream, one that came to a patient many years ago. She was standing in a field of mirrors. In each one she saw not herself, but the faces of those she loved, her mother's sadness, her partner's anger, her child's fear, but her own face nowhere to be seen. As she wept in the dream, one mirror cracked, and through the fracture, her own eyes began to appear. That is the psychic journey of the empath, only through rupture, through saying no, through sacred selfishness. Can your true self be reflected back to you? You must understand that the unconscious does not care for your comfort. It seeks your wholeness, and sometimes in its brutal wisdom, it will bring betrayal, abandonment, and loss into your life, not as punishment, but as initiation. So many empaths ask, why did this person I helped abandon me? Because the soul is trying to show you that your light is being poured into a void, that your empathy without discernment becomes complicity in your own diminishment. There are vampires in the psychic world, not mythical creatures of folklore, but archetypal patterns that feed on the psychic energy of the unaware. Narcissists, victims, martyrs, passive-aggressives, each a mask worn by the hungry shadow, and the empath, radiant and open, becomes the perfect host. This is not romance, it is archetypal possession. And until you name it, it will repeat. Your task is not to save them. Your task is to save the inner orphan who believes love must be earned through sacrifice. That part of you is sacred, yes, but it is not sovereign. You must call it into the light, cradle it with fierce tenderness, and tell it you are already worthy. You no longer need to bleed to belong. Do you feel that pain rising now, that ache in your chest as I speak? That is your shadow knocking. Not the monster under your bed, but the part of you you've disowned for the sake of being good. Your rage, your exhaustion, your desire to be alone, they are not enemies, they are guardians of your truth. In alchemy, there is a stage called nigredo, the blackening. It is when the alchemist descends into darkness. When all known identities dissolve, the empaths must pass through their own nigredo. You must sit with the discomfort of not being the rescuer. You must let the silence surround you. Only then can you hear the voice of your true self, the one not shaped by others' needs, but by your own inner compass. Do not fear the withdrawal. It is not abandonment, it is return. Return to the cave where your inner fire was first lit. Return to the archetypal mother who whispers not obligation, but rest. Return to the sacred symbols that once danced in your dreams before you became the caretaker of others' wounds. There is a difference between carrying and containing. The empath carries what is not theirs. The awakened soul contains only what aligns. You must stop absorbing and start discerning. You are not here to be a psychic landfill. You are here to be a mirror of consciousness. But even mirrors need to be cleaned, cleansed of projections, cleared of others' shadows. You think your love can heal them. But have you asked what your love is costing you? Is it the sleep you lose? The silence you avoid in the self? You sacrifice love when misdirected becomes bondage, and every time you silence your own truth to keep the peace, you are not loving, you are abandoning yourself. The ego will tell you that being needed is the same as being loved. It lies, it seduces, it keeps you hooked on the applause of the broken. But the soul doesn't seek applause. It seeks authenticity. And authenticity requires conflict, rejection, separation. Not all will walk with you through that. Not all will remain when you stop performing empathy and start speaking truth. Let the truth come. Even if it shakes your foundation, even if it burns bridges, even if it leaves you alone in the night. For it is in that night, in the sacred darkness, that the soul returns, and when it does, it will say to you what I say now: your light does not belong to everyone. It belongs to you, and from that rooted light, you will shine not as a servant, but as a sovereign soul. So many of you come to me with trembling hearts, asking, but if I stop giving to them, who will I become? And I ask you in return, what self are you protecting by serving others so compulsively? Is it truly you or the persona you have forged to survive? The persona, you see, is not evil. It is necessary. It allows us to function, to participate in society. But when the empath fuses too tightly with their persona, that of the helper, the healer, the listener, the soft one, they mistake the mask for the soul. And herein lies the tragedy. You begin to believe that any deviation from that mask, any anger, any no, any silence renders you unlovable, or worse, dangerous. But I tell you, the persona is only the outer shell, and beneath it lies the self, vast and multivalent, containing light and darkness, giver and receiver, healer and destroyer. To claim yourself, you must betray the persona. You will lose people. That is inevitable. The moment you stop being who they need you to be, they will call you cruel, selfish, distant. But remember, they were never relating to your soul. They were addicted to your function. And it is not your duty to remain imprisoned in a role for the comfort of others. Let me take you deeper. Let us speak of the anima and the animus, the soul images within us. The empath, often over-identified with the feminine principle, becomes a womb for everyone else's emotion, without developing the masculine structure to protect that womb. Thus, you become fertile soil for projection, but have no walls to defend what is sacred. The inner marriage has not yet taken place. You give endlessly, but do not receive from yourself. You host, but never come home. And what of dreams? Oh, how the unconscious speaks to the empath in dreams of water floods, oceans, drowning. This is no accident. Water is a symbol of emotion, of the unconscious, of the great collective sea. When an empath dreams of drowning, it is the psyche's cry that boundaries have failed. You are absorbing archetypal material without grounding. You are becoming the ocean, and forgetting you are also the shore. I recall one patient who came to me trembling from yet another heartbreak. "I don't understand," she said. "I gave him everything." And indeed, she had her time, her body, her forgiveness, her energy, her very dreams. But in return, she received only crumbs. When I asked her why she stayed, her eyes welled up with tears, because I saw the good in him. I saw the child in him, and that, dear soul, is the curse of the empathic wound, the compulsion to rescue the inner child in another, hoping it will save the abandoned child in yourself. But you cannot adopt every orphan you meet. You cannot be the parent you never had by becoming it for someone else. You must first become it for yourself. And that requires fierce love, not soft, placating affection, but boundary, sovereignty, the divine no. Only then can you discern who is worthy of your light. When you were a child, you likely developed empathy as a shield. If you could feel others' pain in advance, you could prevent it. If you could mirror their moods, they might not hurt you. But that which saved you then is enslaving you now. You are not that child anymore. You are not at the mercy of unstable energies. But until you reclaim the age at which your empathy became overgrown, you will remain a psychic time traveler, reliving the wound instead of healing it. You must go back not to stay, but to retrieve the part of you that made the unconscious contract. I will disappear if you will love me. That agreement must be broken. For disappearing only attracts those who feed on absence, and love, true love, does not require disappearance. It requires presence. Let us speak now of the shadow, not as a threat, but as a friend. The empath often believes they have no shadow because they are so oriented toward light, but this is illusion. The more one identifies with goodness, the more the shadow grows behind them. And that shadow, when unclaimed, will enter relationships as projection. You will attract those who carry your denied traits, your anger, your selfishness, your hunger, and you will try to fix them, not realizing they are mirrors of what you refuse to see in yourself. You are not just a healer. You are also the one who longs to be healed. You are not just the listener. You are also the one whose voice has gone unheard. And until you let those shadowed parts speak, until you hold space for your own rage, grief and desire, you will continue to attract those who embody them for you. This is the law of psychological alchemy. What is not transformed is transmitted. I say again, your light does not belong to everyone, but not from arrogance, from reverence, from sacred discernment. Even the Christ figure withdrew to the wilderness. Even the Buddha sat in silence. They gave, yes, but never from depletion. They gave from fullness. You must become full again. And how do you do this? Through the slow return, the sacred turning inward, not into isolation, but into integration. You begin by listening to the whispers of your body, to the tightness in your chest, to the dream that repeats itself. You journal, you cry, you scream into the pillow if needed. You find the face beneath the mask. You become your own sanctuary. And from this sanctuary, you begin to test the waters. You say no once and survive. You let someone down and live. You express anger and find it sacred. And each act of reclamation becomes a brick in the temple of your true self. Your empathy is not a defect. It is a compass, but only when aligned with inner truth. When distorted, it becomes martyrdom. When clarified, it becomes power. And power, true power, is not dominance, it is presence. It is the capacity to stand in your own energy without bending. It is the authority to choose who sits at your inner table. Let me leave you, for now, with this image, a candle in the center of a vast forest. It does not move, it does not chase, and yet the lost find their way to it. It shines, but it does not burn out. Why? Because it is protected by glass. The wind cannot steal its flame. You, too, must become the protected flame, not closed, but wisely encased. Let the winds howl, let the world need, but do not open your flame to every storm. Not all who come deserve the warmth of your fire. And if you fear that protecting your light will leave you unloved, I say to you, better to be loved by the few who see you clearly than consumed by the many who never truly looked. There is more to be said. There is still a descent to complete. If you are ready, we shall continue. You have walked with me this far into the woods of the soul, and now the path narrows. This is where the psyche begins to tremble, where the old coping mechanisms cry out in protest, as if sensing their imminent death. But I ask you to remain not with your intellect, but with your soul. Stay in this discomfort, for within it lies the threshold of transformation. The empath who begins to awaken feels an unbearable grief, not only for others, but for themselves. It is the grief of realizing how many years have been spent offering life to those who only ever came to take. It is the sorrow of recognizing how the beauty of your giving was never truly seen, only consumed. This grief is sacred. Do not bypass it. Do not silence it with spiritual platitudes or psychological jargon. Let it break you. Let it pour out of you like ancient rain from clouds that have held back for decades. Because beneath that grief is something more primal, something older than the identity of the empath. It is the soul's memory of sovereignty. It is the original self, untouched by trauma, unseduced by approval, standing whole within the garden of the inner world. That self does not give from need. That self does not beg to be seen. That self does not confuse pain with depth, chaos with love, or exhaustion with virtue. We must speak now of something darker, of the shadow that lives in the empath's need to be needed. For it is a need, is it not? And all needs, when unmet, become distorted. The child who needed to be nurtured and was not, grows up to nurture others compulsively, not from wholeness, but from hunger. And hunger makes us vulnerable to predators. There is a particular type of individual drawn to empaths. You know them, you've met them, perhaps you've loved them. They present as charming, magnetic, often wounded. They sense your light and adapt to reflect it back to you at first, but they are not here to receive love. They are here to feed These are not bad people in the moral sense. They are simply unconscious. They have banished their own shadow and are seeking your radiance to survive. But you, dear soul, are not a rehabilitation center for the emotionally exiled. You are not a mirror for broken egos. You are not a container for repressed demons. When you offer light to one who refuses to enter their own darkness, you become their crutch and you begin to limp. Your energy drains, your body aches, your dreams become crowded with strange symbols. This is not love. This is energetic invasion. Your nervous system does not lie. When someone drains you, your chest tightens. Your gut clenches. You leave their presence and feel as though you've aged. This is the body speaking the language of truth. But the empath often overrides this language. They're just going through something. Maybe I'm being too sensitive. No, you are not too sensitive. You are just finally perceiving reality without the veil of codependent idealism. The time has come to become the gatekeeper of your own energy. To understand that just as not all food is fit for your body, not all presence is fit for your soul, you must practice spiritual discernment, not through judgment, but through resonance. Who nourishes you, who leaves you empty, who listens when you speak, not just with ears, but with eyes and presence. These questions are not luxuries. They are matters of spiritual survival. Let me tell you of a dream, my own. This time, I was walking through a vast cathedral made of glass. Light poured in from all sides, and in the center stood a massive chalice, glowing with a soft, otherworldly radiance. As I approached, I saw that the chalice was cracked in places. The golden light leaking out, I tried to patch it, to fix it. But the more I tried, the more the cracks spread. And then I heard a voice, not outside, but within this light is not meant for the unworthy. Seal the chalice. Let it fill again. When I awoke, I understood the chalice was the soul. The cracks were the places where I had given beyond what was wise, beyond what was holy. I had confused generosity with self-abandonment. The dream was a message from the self, restore the vessel before you pour again. And so I ask you, where are your cracks? Where has your light leaked into places that only reflect shadows? Where have you given, not out of fullness, but out of fear that without giving, you are nothing? This is the moment of reckoning. The moment when the empath must choose to continue living as a siphon or to become a sovereign channel of consciousness. Not everyone will walk with you beyond this point. Some will call you selfish. Others will withdraw when you no longer dance to the rhythm of their wounds. Let them go. Their departure is not your loss. It is the universe's way of clearing the space for your real life to begin. You are not here to serve as emotional infrastructure for others. You are not a spiritual utility. You are a soul, radiant and vast, with your own path, your own calling, your own dream encoded deep in your unconscious. That dream cannot unfold while you are entangled in the dramas of those who refuse to awaken. You must detach, not with bitterness, but with grace, with reverence. You do not need to explain your evolution. You do not need to justify your boundaries. The flower does not apologize for blooming when the soil is right. It simply opens. So, too, must you open not to all, but to truth, open to the self that has waited so long behind the veil of performance and sacrifice? The next step is silence. Yes, silence. Not the silence of repression, but the silence of returning, of turning inward, of letting the noise of others fall away until only your own soul remains. In this silence, something ancient begins to stir. A presence, a knowing. You begin to feel it in your bones. A recognition. You whisper to yourself, this is me. And you will cry, not because of loss, but because of reunion. You have returned to your temple. You have remembered the sacred boundaries that says, I am not for everyone. And you have finally understood that this is not arrogance, it is alignment. It is sacred protection of the divine fire within. We are not finished. Not yet. There is one more descent, one final reckoning. Shall we go there together? Come with me now into the deepest chamber, the place few are willing to enter. For it is not paved with ideals or adorned with the comforts of the known. This is the cave of transfiguration. The place where the empath either dissolves into mist or awakens as a sovereign being. Here we must confront the most painful truth of all, that not everyone who received your light wanted to be healed. Some only wanted to be warmed by it, to lie beside your fire without feeding it, without tending it, without ever asking how it burns so bright. They mistook your soul for a service. They mistook your love for access. And in their confusion, or perhaps their unconscious hunger, they taught you something false, that love equals depletion. But I am here to tell you, this heresy ends now. Real love does not exhaust. It expands. Real presence does not consume. It reflects. If you leave an encounter dimmer than before, it was not love. It was archetypal imbalance. A transaction between your wound and theirs. We call it chemistry, we call it destiny, but it is often trauma reenactment cloaked in the language of the divine. The empath must cease being addicted to intensity and learn to crave reciprocity. That is the threshold, that is the final door. For many empaths, love is synonymous with struggle. You feel most alive when there is something to fix, to mend, to soothe. But this aliveness is not wholeness. It is adrenaline. It is hypervigilance. It is the nervous system repeating the only love it has ever known, conditional, chaotic, and costly. Healing requires a new blueprint. And that blueprint begins with solitude, not loneliness, but sacred solitude, a space where you learn to differentiate between your voice and theirs, where your needs are not muted by another's crises, where you remember what it is to be whole without orbiting someone else's gravity. In this silence, something returns, a presence. Perhaps you feel it even now, a hum in the chest, a stillness behind the eyes. This is yourself, not the social mask, not the inherited role, not the habitual helper, but the radiant, unbroken core that existed long before you were taught to become palatable. This self does not rush, it does not explain, it simply is. And from its center, light flows not outward in desperation, but inward in sanctity. It does not seek to convert others. It does not run after those who walk away. It knows its value, and that knowing becomes a boundary stronger than iron. Can you feel it rising in you now, that subtle shift, like a tide turning, the realization that you were never meant to be everything for everyone, that perhaps the greatest act of love you will ever perform is to finally fully belong to yourself. But I must also warn you, there is a grief that comes with freedom, the grief of seeing clearly, of realizing how many connections were built, not on resonance, but on rescue, of recognizing the depth of your own complicity in your depletion, of facing the raw truth that you to feared your own power, because to claim it would mean giving up the comforting illusion of victimhood. You are not a victim. You are a portal. You are not a sponge. You are a prism. And the time has come to stop absorbing and begin reflecting. The final test for the empath is not giving, it is receiving. Can you receive presence without guilt? Can you be adored without shrinking? Can you let yourself be known? Not as a savior, but as a soul. This requires a breaking of ancient contracts, the ones that said, I will be loved if I stay small. The ones that whispered, they will leave if I shine too bright. Let them, if your light drives them away. They were not your people. They were merely shadows drawn to warmth. They could not sustain. Now is the hour of remembrance. To remember who you were before the world taught you to barter your essence for belonging. To recall the sacred geometry of your spirit, the one not built on service, but on sovereignty. To stand, perhaps trembling but unwavering, and declare, I am not for everyone. I am not for the unready. I am not for the takers, the charmers, the soul thieves. I am for the sacred, for the honest, for the ones who walk their own path and meet me at the center. There will be loneliness here. Do not mistake it for error. It is the shedding of noise. It is the clearing of psychic clutter. It is the silence before the song of truth returns. In that silence, you will meet your truest allies, not many, but few, not loud, but luminous. They will not need you to dim. They will not need you to disappear. They will say, come as you are and stay that way. This is your homecoming, and from this place, you may choose to give again, not from fear, not from compulsion, but from conscious choice. You may pour your light, but only into vessels that reflect it. You may hold space, but not at the expense of your own. You may love, but from fullness, not fracture. And if someone asks why you no longer burn at both ends, tell them this, because I finally understood that my light does not belong to everyone. It belongs to those who see it, protect it, and meet it with a flame of their own. And perhaps, just perhaps, that's the most divine message of all.